Hello, John. Thank you for coming back onto the show. This is our part 35.
Wow, 35.
So 35. So how you doing? A lot has been happening in the world since we last talked.
We had the 2 weeks hiatus because I had to get my last Angel Rurik uh illustrated Hogue prophecy report to all my people because I had to spend a month just trying to play catch up with new things happening. And it ended up being 10 articles, really good ones. A lot of people who are my subscribers have read it. And right now I'm doing a fundraiser to help me get the kind of money I need to add Substack and Patreon and some other things to help my rather meager financial resources. So I mean, Paul's got, a lot of people in the Hogue Prophecy Report are also fans of Paul and me. So you can almost call the report kind of a a magazine for our series in a way. And so if you want to get it on an automatic payment, you can do that. Just go to my um, freebies on hogueprophecy.com. That's also going to finally get back into cell phone friendliness. That's another big thing we're changing. But there you go, and you will see the link there. And you go and then look at my usually actually it's 1.5 articles. Big articles are free, and then there's the other 8 that have samples. And then you can also donate there and get a 12-year subscription for either do it automatic for $5 a month, or you can do it one hit for 12, and it's just $60. So it's $5 a month both ways. You can either do it at one time or another. And please consider it because especially if you've been sitting on the fence there thinking, oh well, the other people are gonna probably go in there. I can tell you, there's a wonderful story that I tell every once in a while to my subscribers who are kind of let their subscriptions going. Um, there's this real story that happened back in during Nostradamus's day, but over in the Mughal Empire in India. It's a tale that's actually documented by Emperor Akbar. It's a book he wrote. And in it were often these episodes where he had this, one of his princes was also kind of his court jester. His name was Birbal, and he had the most amazing ways of sorting out problems. And one problem was that during the Buddha full moon, the Waisak festival was happening, and they were going to there was going to be some swans, black swans, coming out of Tibet to be the day after was going to be put in a new pond, but they didn't want to fill it with water because of the idea they had back in the 16th century that swans can actually separate water from milk. So if you're pouring all the milk in to mix it, what they wanted to do is have the pond that they had just built in the palace all filled with milk. So he ordered all the people to of the capital, that whether they were high caste or low, they had to come after sundown and before sunrise and put a little cup of milk into the water. So Birbal and the emperor are on the veranda. It's pitch black. There's a lot of sloshing going on, and the emperor's quite satisfied with himself. He's saying, "Well, it looks like the whole capital's come in and is pouring milk into our pond." And Birbal started cackling. He said, "Oh, my dear master, emperor of the world, you do not know human nature like I do." He said, "I will wager you that at dawn, you and I will be standing before the pond at sunrise, and it will be completely filled with water. And Akbar would say, well, you're on. You're on with that wage. So the dawn came, multitude had left, and it was completely filled with water. So Birbal said, I have a solution. You take your guards and pick 100 people across all castes, high and low, untouchable and Brahmin, and you bring them here, and then each person will have a private audience with you, going through one door and then going back out, so he can't tell anybody what's going on. And I promise you, pretty much everyone will tell you exactly the same story, why it's full of water and not milk. So they did it. And after a few dozen, it was very clear that they all came in, high or low, and they said, well, I came to the pond, it was dark, there were all these people there, and I heard all the swashing and washing of poured milk into the pond, and I thought, well, thank goodness I didn't bring any milk, because milk's kind of expensive, and all these other people are pouring milk in there. My little cup of water isn't going to even be noticed. And that is the problem with a lot of donors. They're all sitting on the fence, like the penguins that are in the Antarctica, and they're all waiting for the one penguin to slide in to see if he survives or not diving in because of the leopard seals. And they're all going, no, no one's going to make it. And then finally one goes, and then he doesn't show up for a long time. He said, well, he's done. He's doomed. We got to sit here on this ice. And then suddenly he comes back, and he's actually got some fish. And he says, well, we always knew he's going to make it. So, there's these certain psychologies that happen. And I mean, we all do it. So it's not like a condemnation, but, I've had to say to some of my subscribers, I have to like speak to them like, look, you think there's a whole multitude of people reading this right now, but in this moment right now, only you are reading this. Only you are reading my call for financial help, because I really am kind of getting dire straits here. I need more support, and we'll get it. But we'll get it if you understand that there's nobody on a fence. There's no fence. There's just you and me in this moment when you're reading me, or in this moment when you're seeing me talking to you. So if you've been kind of on the fence about, well, he's famous. People equate money with fame all the time in America. Lee Harvey Oswald was very famous, but he had no money at all. So, uh, so, so, if you feel it, if you have a yes for it, don't wait for others. Do it, and go to hogueprophecy.com and leave your cup of milk rather than water. And whatever you do, I love you.
Just to remind the audience, I have in the description and in the chat box the link to John's website, so you can sign up for his periodical and also sign up for readings. And I'll continue to remind you throughout this broadcast to please click that link and sign up and help John out. So, John, a lot is happening in the world and in California. So I don't know.
Yeah, I've had letters of people coming in saying, is this the blue on red civil war that you've been talking about since 1998 happening in the 2020s? But continue.
Well, I mean, last we were talking, you were talking about the Roaring Twenties, and in your email to me about fire. Well, we thought maybe fire meant Iran, but fire may be actually Cali.
Well, at this very moment, a Russian offensive has crossed the border of Dnipro and is on its way. It's just beginning, but maybe weeks, maybe in a month, they'll be on the Dnieper. The other thing that's happening is at this current flip of the flop of Trump, he's now, after calling Putin crazy, he discovered that his secret services are not actually telling him everything and keeping him off the loop. In a way, he kind of had one of his Trumpian 8-year-old moments where he said, suddenly he's killing all these people. What's going on? Of course, so he's not being informed of one thing. One is that when you see civilians, and there were only 26 killed, which is terrible, but if this was like a bombing raid of Dresden, it'd be 300,000, where it didn't matter with civilians. They just firebombed the city. So that showed he was so misinformed that some reporter was very brave and said to him, but Mr. President, aren't you aware? Have you not been informed that a bunch of drones tried to assassinate Putin in his helicopter? And he honestly kind of looked, and he said, no, I haven't heard that. Maybe that would be a cause for him to do something crazy or mad like that. But he's out of the loop. I'm hearing that he doesn't read. I'm hearing that he's only getting a security briefing, not every morning, but once a week. And Tulsi is not there for some reason. So maybe it's because she's going to tell him stuff that certain people in his cabinet don't want him to know about, like Rubio. I don't know. I'm just speculating, but there's the deep state wants this war to continue, and but he had this call. He then called. That was good for Trump. He called Putin, and then for an hour and 15 minutes he got the scoop, and now he's a 180 and realizes that Zelensky is he was bombing civilian trains. There was also the thing that happened, which actually has brought us back into the Cuban Missile Crisis moment. The Ukrainian missile crisis is back. And that was when, after 18 months, Ukraine, with a lot of assistance from Britain and certain elements that don't want to talk to Trump in his secret services, the CIA, where for 18 months they were preparing this thing where it's pretty amazing, very James Bond. That's why the British are involved in it. They always love to go Bond bonkers when they do stuff with Ukraine into Russia. So what they did is they had all these Russian truckers. The stuff was built inside Russia. The people were just hired, and they were hired to park these large trucks that had built in them a roof that could open. And just underneath that roof were dozens of drones. And then, because of the signaling, without a single Ukrainian drone operator in Russia, indeed, all the way into Irkutsk, all the way 6,000 miles into Siberia, and 4 other bases, they launched these drones on the strategic wing, the strategic triad of the bombers, atomic bombers, to try to destroy 1/3 of them, they claim. Now, Zelensky's consistent, and the Ukrainian Nazi regime is, with its Jewish puppet, is very consistent on one thing. They always say so much more has been destroyed because basically they're waging this war as a narrative rather than a reality. And I've been watching all their own footage. Actually, what they did is they linked the signal onto Telegraph. It'd be like somebody linking the signal onto X here, and they were able then to activate a lot of the drones from Ukraine. It was pretty brilliant, the thing they did, because they could not have done it without CIA and MI6, the UK, United Kingdom, the James Bond people. And so but what I'm finding out, because even the Ukrainians were showing the footage, they were so happy. Look at us! We're flying over one jet after another. We're blowing them up. Isn't that amazing? And then if you look closer, there's about 3 that got damaged, but all the others had no engines on their wings. The things that were not Tupolev bombers and other strategic bombers like our B-52s. I mean, what would you do if Mexico had Chinese based drone people and trucks from Mexico with with honest truckers get parked around the Louisiana Air Base and some of the other air bases, and they start destroying our B-52s, which are parked in the open. And by the way, you know why they're parked in the open? They're parked in the open in Russia as well as here because of the New START treaty. It's one of the last treaties left that we haven't, the Americans haven't dismantled, start getting us now at this arms race at the verge of World War III, which is what those treaties were supposed to prevent. And so these treaties are being ignored by the Ukrainians. They say, oh, they're out there. And what's scary about this is in the Russian doctrine of nuclear deterrence, if if a country that is a nuclear superpower even uses another country as a proxy to attack any of the submarines or the missile systems or the strategic bombers of the nuclear triad of the Russian Federation, that is grounds for launching everything. Doomsday, mad, mutually assured destruction. That's what these idiots in Kiev set us up for, and with the help secretly of people that are not informing Trump that they're doing it, because you see, they stuck around it. This was actually a plan 18 months ago. That means this is a Anthony Blinken plan. This is a Jake Sullivan, Ichabod Crane looking plan, headless horseman looking plan. This is Biden without a brains plan. And no one informed them when the change came. Nobody wanted to, because it's easy to do that, because frankly, the discipline and disorganization of the Trump administration is epic. And so, and it seems like Trump is a bit overwhelmed by the lack of connections going on. And the deep state is just letting that happen. In fact, one could argue that Doge did more to clear out all the garbage and make the deep state leaner and meaner. So, these are the great challenges that Trump has before him. But put that aside for a moment. The situation was that when all this was happening, also there were two civilian trains that terrorists of Ukraine waited to detonate bridges with the trains on them. Killed 7, injured 60, and it has angered the Russian people in a way that nothing has angered them yet. And it's the kind of thing, somebody said it's a bit dramatic, but I kind of agree with it. We're the Japanese who just bombed Pearl Harbor through our proxies. And it's awakened the sleeping giant, just like Pearl Harbor awakened the sleeping giant. Only now it wasn't direct, it was proxy. But that's how it's feeling in Russia now. You may not know this if you watch the mainstream press, but Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin is often severely criticized by his people. You can see it on Russian TV. You can see it on Telegram channels. You can see the kind of debate and discussion that you do not see in the United States. I mean, they are a democracy. They are looking at, if you just listen to CNN and the mainstream news and the Fox outfoxing your intelligence, with that General Preen or somebody that he's never said an accurate thing in 30 years that I've watched him, this retired general. He says, oh, we're going to do this. And I've never seen him get anything right. It seems like you become, as they said in that funny film, you go full retard once you got 3 or 4 stars on your shoulder. They should only allow colonels to. I have some wonderful colonels, one of which almost got in Trump's as sources, got into Trump's cabinet as an assistant to Tulsi Gabbard. And that was some of you might watch him, Daniel Daniel Day-Lewis, not Daniel Day-Lewis, that's the actor. Um, Colonel Daniel, I'm getting it wrong. Anyway, he is a anyway, I got his name wrong. Uh, you've seen him. You know who I'm talking about, most of you. I'm having a Biden moment. I could just do the all things created, the thing. But
Is he on Fox Live?
yeah, he's been on
Yeah,
rarely,
I
on
think
rare
I think I
occasion.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe you could
I
search him out. Daniel
Colonel, right?
Day, I think.
Who's Colonel?
Yeah, and he's got hell, I can find him too. Mr. Hogue's having a senior moment.
Davis. Daniel Davis, isn't it? No.
Daniel Davis, yeah.
Daniel Davis? Okay.
Daniel Davis Deep Dive, everybody. I highly recommend it. It's a very good show. And yeah, Daniel Day Lewis. Oh, Daniel Dave Deep Dive. I'm gonna keep going that.
Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis.
Yeah, Daniel Davis. That's it. Anyway, yeah. So he came this close to being there, and man, that would have been if somebody like that, if Trump was listening to somebody like that. In fact, if Trump was listening to the Duran, I know his vice president listens to the Duran, and guess what? He goes to every briefing, intelligence briefing. I can say one bit of good news to the MAGA people. This vice president is consistently showing me that he could, if we get through this, when he is president, he may really be a formidable, intelligent, Kennedy-esque, listen to everything, read everything, study everything kind of president. Take no BS from the intelligence. He's showing these signs. He's engaged. And strangely enough, or maybe not so strangely, Don Jr., Trump's firstborn son, he's also listening to a lot of the same sources that I'm listening to, getting their eyes opened. So anyway, these terror attacks, the thing that was amazing to see, and they took them off. You might still see it on X because once it's on X, it's hard to not see it. But there's these other kind of AWACS style Russian planes, radar planes that were also being bombed. But if you looked at them, they were rusty, they had no engines, and there's because none of these jets that were bombed are being manufactured now for decades, they're cannibal. A lot of the jets that got destroyed, which were only less than 7, not 40, you'll notice that there's no videos of any of the other stuff, and if they were there, all the satellites would see all these 30, 40 ruined jets, and you would be hearing a lot about it. Have you noticed there's not that many? Have you noticed that there's just the same little gang? Because actually it was only 3 of the bases, the signal didn't get to them, so the trucks were just idle. It was only 2 of the bases that were attacked. One was north of Irkutsk, north of Lake Baikal, was attacked, and I think there was another one closer into European Russia that was attacked. But the other 3 bases they were targeting, the signals didn't work, and the trucks, in some cases, the police actually were firing on the trucks. As I have videos of where some of them are coming out of the top of the roof, and you're hearing these excited Russian police firing at them. Uh, so where you see all the columns of smoke and stuff, that's mostly cannibalized derelicts that got hit. There may be just 3 bombers, and some are even saying that some of that stuff, some of the explosions look kind of weird. Like there was one shot that looked like it was AI, where there's a little explosion on the wing, and suddenly the wing just goes plump like that, off like that. I thought, wait a minute, that's that looked like a little doctoring was going on. So anyway, people can shout and yell and debate about all that, but this has created is we are right back into the Ukrainian missile crisis danger that first window that happened just after the election up to Biden's retirement. And there's a strong push again for the Taurus German missiles to be put into Russia. They're probably already there. Trump has now said no to Merz, the new fool after Schultz was the chancellor. I mean, Hogan's Heroes had this will date a lot of us. Hogan's Heroes was this comedy spoof about Western POWs in a German POW camp. It was kind of like the Great Escape as a comedy, and it was a very highly successful show. And it had had Colonel Klink, who was very uber Prussian, and there was also this big dumb sergeant Staffel, a German, and he was the guy that they could always corrupt and manipulate. And he was called, and it also Schultz, yes, sir. He comes in and in his famous statement, which became comedy TV legend, is "I know nothing, I know nothing." And yeah, so Schultz looked as dumb as that guy. He looked like he could have been a character on Hogan's Heroes, and it got worse with Merz. Merz is he kind of looks like a Devo, like a retired We Are Devo, Devo, kind of a German punk rocker that's now in midlife crisis. Got a little kind of Poindexter, a little tuft of hair, pointy point ahead. And he was talking to Trump in the Oval Office a few days ago, trying to convince him about, we did some really great things when we invaded the Soviet Union. And even Trump was saying, I don't know, that didn't turn out good for you. That whole thing didn't turn out good for you. Then he was trying to explain the good things that they did by invading Russia then and why they should do it again. I mean, my God, you can't write this comedy up. So anyway, it didn't go down well. They didn't get the go to use Taurus missiles, 150 of them. They are nuclear capable, but they can go 500 kilometers into Russia, just like they were doing back at the end of last year. And the Russians said, if you're firing on it, we consider it U.S. as well as Germany declaring war on us. And they basically told them, said, if you do that, we will obliterate Rheinmetall, which is where these Taurus missiles are made in Western Germany. It'll take the Oreshnik only 11 minutes to hit it from launch in central Russia, being hypersonic at Mach 10. And so we're in a situation where targets in NATO directly could be hit as demonstrations. So that's potentially there. So for now, Trump is not going to give the okay, because these can't be fired without satellite telemetry from the United States. But if the United States does that again, the Russians will have to remind them this, well, what you're doing is you're in direct war with us. And if you hit something really serious with your Taurus missiles, Germany is going to be hit, and some of your assets are going to be hit because you're at war with us. So really dangerous stuff, folks. And so right now, Trump is saying, no, we were not going to do it. But Trump is, I'm sometimes worry that if he, it's let's go Brandon part two. There's moments where Trump is acting just like Biden. It's like it's a different face, it's a different person, but he's doing the flip-flopping just like Biden did. Biden used to say, "Oh, well, that would be World War III if I do that," and then 6 months later he says, "Oh, let's do that." And I wouldn't be surprised if Trump had another flip to a flop, and gave the Germans the okay. And then here we are again. So What is about to happen, if you think some of the bombardments that have been going on in Ukraine last week are the reprisal for what happened, you haven't seen anything yet. It's going to be much more than that. What is happening is this special military operation, the SMO, as the Russians have called this since February of 2022, when they preempted an invasion of Ukraine to ethnically cleanse the Donbass Russian-speaking Ukrainian oblasts, states. They they were going to just push them out and kill anyone who didn't leave. And that army had been prepared to do that for 8 years with NATO training, NATO instruction, and I would say probably a lot of NATO advisors in the mix of it. Uh, you'll never hear that in the West, but you will hear about that with evidence if you read me. And through my Hogue prophecy reports, your whole world will be opened by all of my sources. The Duran, Scott Ritter, um, uh, Judge Napolitano, Andrew Napolitano. He's very interesting since he got fired from Fox. And you will see the thinkers, the people that have a brain. Most of them have been fired from the mainstream news and CNN and Fox and stuff because they're not following the keep those people brain dead. They're wanting you to think. They want you to know what's going down. And I'm a member of this group. I mean, I don't have any personal association with any of these people, except I do know that my Iranian contact does read me on X. That is Professor Syed Mohammed Marandi. So I did find that out. So I wrote back to him. That was nice to know. But he's a very good source for what really goes on in Iran. He's been consistent. I've been using him since 2012. Um, and so go check him out. Don't believe what I'm saying. Go check him out. See if I'm full of it or not. Um, so so that is um, the the war is now entering its summer months, and there's now an extension happening slowly but inexorably. The Russians are building what could eventually be a buffer zone that's going to add another 900 kilometers to the 4,000-kilometer line. And what I talk about in my last Hogue Prophecy Bulletin War special is some very interesting stuff that the Duran people, Macuris and Christoforou, made me aware of. His paper, his essay. This is an American retired colonel, um, and he has really been spot on with stuff that he said. And basically, Ukraine at this stage of the war has drafted and mobilized since 2022 3 million men, but there's only 880,000 left fighting on the line. And in fact, not on the line. A lot of them have to be territorially guarding the frontiers, White Russia, all of those things. There's probably less than 600,000 men on the line. And what the Russians are doing is everybody in the West wants them to take territory. They got this idea that, oh, if he's not taking territory, it's a stalemate. The thing that's I've been just pointing out, and so are the people in my field of the authentic news, is that since February of 2024, since Avdiivka fell, the fortress linchpin of the Donbass Ukrainian line, um, you just watch some of the movie maps of it. The line is moving. They are, and it's moving faster and faster. Ukrainians keep having to retreat because they're about to be surrounded into cauldrons, as I predicted would happen. And now today, they have passed over the border from Donetsk into Dnipro, which is the central strategic state. That's where the Dnieper River, which divides Ukraine, makes its lift up from the Black Sea and makes a sudden shift, put in your point of view this way, down right up to Kiev. If that is taken by the Russians, they will have a bridgehead into whatever part of Ukraine they wish to advance from. So I'm anticipating this now, but remember that I said this, but in a month's time, you will be seeing it. It will be inescapable that this is happening. So, but even before then, there's something that's just absolutely shocking that it's just happened now, and it's so shocking, it could literally break the Ukrainian army's will to fight. The Russians there's been these prisoner swaps, but there's also been body swaps. The Russians have in their refrigerated places, they have 6,000 dead Ukrainians in black plastic body bags. I've seen the footage of it, the movies of it. It's confirmed they have it. And we're ready today to give those. And the only thing the Ukrainians can't even find 100 or 200 body bags for the Russians, which does two things. It objectively proves to what extent it really is 10 Ukrainians dying to every one Russian. And that's still, as you'll read in my Hogue Prophecy reports about it, the Russian death toll is around 120,000. That's twice as many people in 3 years, 3.5 years, that died already in this war, that took the U.S. losing their men at only half of that in 10 years, 57,000. Russians have already lost a level of loss of life that we would never tolerate, but they're in it. And so the breakdown is that the Ukrainian system the regime doesn't want to bring in those body bags, because that means, because they're all tagged, they're all identified, that means that the Russian government and all the generals that have been pocketing all the money for people missing in action, which exceeds a couple 100,000, they're going to have just 6,000 of those missing in action identified, which means they have to give that money to the families, the wives, the children of those who have fought bravely, and they have fought bravely. You'll never find any Russians disparaging the Ukrainians on the battlefield, because they say, well, they're like us. They're brother Russian Slavs. They fight like it. They're not led very well, but they fight like tigers, just like we do. And so what they've been doing has been all throughout the war is that generals have been pocketing the missing in action. They just declare when people are dead, because they left them there dead. They just call them missing in action, because then they pocket the money. And they've been doing a whole grift with this money. So it could very well be that the Ukrainian regime doesn't want to bring those body bags in, because they will have to pay out $2 billion in US money to all the bereaved families and wives and widows, because now they've been found, thanks to the Russians. And they don't have the money to pay it. So this potentially, it's already causing more. There's already been 250,000 people this year that have deserted the ranks and just left the front. I'm getting reports where certain units, Ukrainian units, are not going for a third or fourth mass attack into something to get killed. They just say, we're not going to do it anymore. So there's a situation brewing, a black swan event brewing, where you wouldn't be surprised. What they're always saying, a lot of the National Guard that has often been there to check block any of the rank and file, because most of the National Guard, which is a large force of Ukrainians, hundreds of thousands, are all fascists. And but they're having so much tension back home, and some of those blocking brigades to block people from deserting, are having to be moved into Kharkov, into Kiev, into some of the other cities to keep social order. So the SMO may now be called the ATMO, Admiral, in its new acronym, Anti-Terrorist Military Operation. Putin is finally showing that he can be very angry. He doesn't anger much, but when you don't want him to get angry, because he's the last Russian of the 150 million who are moderate enough to keep this going really big. And now he's even saying, I can't deal with it. Why should we try to even discuss anything in Istanbul with these people? They're all terrorists. They act like terrorists. They're turning into terrorist organizations. And what do we do with terrorists? Well, if you follow Russian law, when they have the Chechen wars and all, what they do is they look at special situations legally, because one thing the lawyer Putin is, he's all about doing it according to the book, even assassination, state-sanctioned assassination. And it may very well happen that um, the days are numbered of many of the leaders, Budanov of the SBU and military police, even the President Zelensky himself may be hit because they're not seen as a regime. They're not even seen as a regime anymore. They're seen as Al-Qaeda. They're seen as ISIS. And what did we do? We were constantly trying to kill off all the leaders of the Islamic State when they were around, and we were hunting down bin Laden. Zelensky has begun to become bin Laden in the eyes of the Russian government as well as the people. They were always pretty much about that. But now, even Lavrov, one of the greatest foreign ministers in history, is losing his temper. So there could be some very dramatic and surprising days. You wake up and you find out maybe that the whole Ukrainian government has been taken out. And if you can't negotiate peace with this, then there's only one way this war is going to be solved. And I've always said, even a year before it happened, that it would be like this. In April of 2021, I started talking about how when there was a close call of it happening, then I said, it's going to happen. And the Russians will go full bore, and the Ukraine will be destroyed. And suing for unconditional surrender. I said, this is where it's going. And it is at this point, it looks like that's exactly where it's going. And now even Trump and the US government is throwing their hands up. And the Europeans are going gaga. They're pretending like, oh, let's build industries. Let's forget about our pensioners, and let's forget about how our health care is going down the toilet. Let's Starmer, the Prime Minister of United Kingdom, wants to build in 6 years a military industrial complex that could fight Russia. Yeah, it's just silly. And it would be okay if it was your Uncle Bob who's just losing it a little bit. But when it's the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, when it's the President Macron of France who wants to put 20,000 French soldiers against an advancing 1 million Russians with 20,000 tanks, and they maybe have 100, this is just this is, I've never seen anything crazier than this in all my study of military history. And always the one factor I'll leave with this narrative on this current thing is that we have a West that, as a collective mindset of leadership for half a millennium, for 500 years, has, up or down, flush or poor, it has dominated the world. It has always been the boss. It may lose a war here, but it'll recover it back there. But this time, the collective West is losing everything of their hegemonic control of the world. The world's had enough of it. The BRICS is building, and Russia and China and India are the core of it. Brazil as well, struggling with it. But fundamentally, the global majority of the human race, which does which is everybody but the 17% of the collective West of the 8 billion people on this planet. Only 70%, 17%, 17% is America, Canada, the European Union, the wannabe Western Japanese, and Australia, and that great hegemon, New Zealand. It's like, you know, Kiwis rule. And so the Lord of the Rings got filmed there. That must give them the magic to do it. Uh, that the biggest thing that's concerned me is what's going to happen to such a deep programming that even has a kind of racial dominance, racism about it. You kind of see it also in the Zionist situation. You know, people who believe that God chose them and they're above the law because they have a soul, and the rest of us who are not Zionists do not, including a lot of Jewish people who are against Zionism. And they must have lost it somewhere, you know. And the when defeat finally comes to the threshold of the West, to Europe, to the United States, do they have to go? Are they so blind in such denial and so unpragmatic to understand the world is changing? And that defeat, uh, if they don't believe they can be defeated, what kind of things will they do when they are defeated on the battlefields, in the oceans, economically by a world turning away from their currencies because they just got another way to do it without all this toxic sanctioning, which has turned the world against the West. And systematic starvation in Gaza has finally been the step that has made the world go, wait, what's going on with Israel right now? The systematic starvation of the Palestinians, which I've been talking about for since October of 2023 in the Hogue prophecy reports, this last bunch. I review all the predictions. I said that this would end up with a systematic starvation syndrome. You know, let this Holocaust end with a whimper rather than bombs and other ways. It's an affordable way. You don't have to build gas chambers. You don't have to move people around. You just keep them there, and you create a quasi Mossad facade to replace UNRWA, which has been feeding Palestinians and giving all kinds of aids to Palestinians since early 1950s. You get this this false UNRWA that the Mossad has stuck together with a bunch of American mercenaries with guns, and they have the people. What they're trying to do is trying to get all the Palestinians to, because this is the only place you can get food. When UNRWA was doing it, there were food stations all across the Gaza Strip. But now they're trying to get them out of the north by saying we are the only people who have the food here and the water. And so you got to come down here. And if they survive the bombings, if they survive on a low calorie intake, that is bringing hundreds of thousands of people to a point of critical starvation, many of them will die just trying to get to the food. And then I've seen the photos of it. They put them literally in cow-like pens. It looks like the way people lined up at Auschwitz to get their little cup of hardly anything to eat. It's sickening. And to have Israel doing this, how crazy is that? I mean, they're all crowded in these pens, and they're all like standing for hours in the hot desert, hot semi-arid climate, um, cheek to jowl, in pens like cattle. And what happens is, if you go there, they're trying to sit with what little food, because Smotrich, the finance minister that's overseeing this, he's also said quite openly, and I quote him again in my articles, that he said he was saying to a right-wing group, and it got taped in Hebrew. He was saying, you know, it's probably going to be, we need the help of the world right now. We can't alienate the world, even though what we're doing to kill maybe 2 million Palestinians, even if we want to starve them, we know it's legit and blessed, and that it's, but they won't know. The goyim won't know, and that could cause us a lot of trouble if they suddenly get angry about it. I mean, these people have no moral sense at all. Even the Germans were a little more cautious about. They seemed to be aware that they were doing a great evil. I mean, even Himmler, when he had a little brain hit his forehead, his chin, his cheek, when he was observing the firing squads shooting Russian prisoners of war and Jews, he almost fainted and fell into the pile of bodies, and everybody saw it. So he sat everybody down, all the commanders, and he used that kind of psychotic, great reasoning. He said, nobody at home, we're never going to be able to tell everybody at home what we're doing here. And they'll just not understand that we have to do this necessary evil to kill these bed bugs. And we'll never be able to tell our people at home, but it's for the greater good that we must eradicate the Jews in this way and find better ways of doing it. I will try to find better ways, because a lot of his people were going mad, because even a psychotic Nazi is a human being, and as it is happening to a lot of IDF soldiers, a lot of them are not coming back to fight because they're literally in a breakdown from, like the SS guys used to get broken down, psychologically lose it, because it's just so unnatural to shoot children every day, and defensive women, and civilians stripped naked and then treated like exposed and frightened and vulnerable. I mean, that was an actual strategy, that if people lose their clothes in a public area where they've never done that, and imagine how much worse it is in an Islamic country where people, men and women who don't know each other, not members of family, are all naked together. It's even more traumatizing and paralyzing. And that's why I always wondered, why did they strip people so much? And it's because it really, it's like your being is what you wear. And when I did groups in India where we would do encounter groups naked, I mean, we didn't wear any clothes, because in a way it was like getting rid of how much our ego is based on how we look, what clothes we wear. And so there can be a positive way in counter groups, and there can be a very positive way of doing that. I mean, what happens is, it's like in the episodes of Naked and Afraid. First, you get over the shock, because first off, there's not a bunch of people with guns forcing you down certain aisles to be shot or something without your clothes on. These are very loving people, therapists and stuff. And what you find out is, once it's okay and everybody gets used to it, it's like, well, you're a human hamster, like hamsters look like this. This is what humans look like. And actually it actually frees in an encounter group. It actually brings you back to your childlike innocence, because it does, all the sexual stuff goes away. It's just like, it gets, I mean, this is my experience and a lot of experiences. Maybe other people did not have the same experience. I'm sure there were some people that didn't, but um, it can be used in a beautiful way to just give you an experience of yourself in your own skin, just as you are, and amongst other people in their own skin, just as they are. Or it can be used in a terrible way, forced. I mean, we volunteered. No one was forced. This is what okay, we're going to do this. All right. These people weren't asked, and that's not the way to do it. So anyway, it's the world is awakening now, at last, to the second great genocide. In Not quite a century has passed since the great genocide of Semites happened in 1930s and 40s. Now we are having again the Semitic people, the people of Abraham, being slaughtered and starved to death, just like what happened before. But the qualifier is so strange. The people that are doing it to the other people are all both cousin brothers and sisters, rooted to Abraham, the same seed. Some are Arabs, some are Jews. The Jews believe, these certain Jews, not a majority of the Jewish people in the world, even Israeli prime ministers of past, Ehud Olmert and Ehud Barat, have come forth and said, this is genocide. They've come, it's so bad, they're saying we are killing people like the Nazis. Prime ministers of Israel now saying it. Even that British commentator, I can't think of his name at the moment, but he's always loves to create arguments, and he just looks kind of calm and watches it all. Yes, a couple days ago, I saw him actually make a testament on his show where he says, I'm for Israel. I always have been and always will, but this is a genocide. They are starving people to death. It's like he's like what happened to President Johnson when Walter Cronkite on CBS News in Vietnam says, I'm afraid that we're not winning this war. And he's watching the television. He used to have 3 or 4 televisions going of all the 4 news networks. And he's sitting there in the White House and he's going, my God, if I've lost Walter Cronkite, I've lost middle America. And not long after that, he declared, I saw it live by accident on the evening news. He's talking about stuff, and suddenly he says, I'm not going to run for president because I'm responsible for this war not working. And it was triggered by Walter Cronkite. So this man who is very famous. I have trouble with the names today. He is saying exactly the same things. He's telling the truth. And I never thought I'd see him have this come to Jesus moment. So when he is starting to see that, it's again one of the things about our times right now: significant changes, black swan surprises. It's an end of an age, not just it's the end of 500 years of Western dominance of the world, and the rest of the world wants to run itself. And you know what? We can be a part of that. No one's shutting us out. No one's sanctioning us. We're doing all the shutting out and the sanctioning and the demanding. So the problem is the real reckoning. It's going to come between now and 2028, because there's the Chinese thing that's boiling now. Not that the Chinese are doing anything, but we are wanting to attack them, and that there's a lot of bias in America that's actually for it, and it's crazy. It's so what's going to happen is, if we do that, we will lose. This country has never suffered a total defeat. Now, French people have suffered it, Napoleon, and then his nephew, Napoleon III. So France in 1 century lost 2 empires. Germany had an empire in 1870 and lost it in 1919. Built a second Reich and a third Reich empire and lost that too. But America's never had that. We've never had the Russians and the Allies surrounding Washington like Berlin. We've never been bombed into a lunar landscape. We've always avoided all that. We've been on this lucky few of us on the world that have 2 vast oceans between us and our enemies. But we're dumb enough to overextend ourselves in ways we can no longer do, and see our military forces utterly destroyed. If we go into war with Iran, the Navy will be sunk. We will lose lots of planes over Iran from advanced Russian air defenses that they have. 20 years ahead of our own. And what will we do then when conventionally we have been defeated like Napoleon, defeated like Hitler? Because we have one thing left: nuclear weapons. So my greatest concern, and this will be the test, I've talked about it before, we're still in the middle of this and we could still have this great moment happen. Will we accept defeat? Or will we take the whole world with us, we of the West? So, that's something, it's scary, but you've got to face your fears. Otherwise, if you ignore them, if you deny them, they will haunt you like a shadow. And, Osho used to say this to people, says, whatsoever you're afraid of, don't avoid it. Whatsoever you do not want to face it. If you are afraid, don't run away from it. Go into it with a witnessing consciousness. Otherwise, it will haunt you like a shadow. So, it's like with pain. I had my first experience of kidney stones, and it was really painful. I didn't freak out. I just went to the very center of my left kidney and was there with it. And it's amazing, if you face pain, if you face fear, um, it kind of evaporates. Or what evaporates is your attachment to what might happen. And then you can think and reason, even if you're trying to walk your way to an ambulance and go, and you can, it was a different experience for me. It's like in a way, the West is about to have kidney stones that they developed for bad habits of 500 years of always being on the top of it. Now we're not. And now we got to pass those stones. And yeah, do we have anyone who is asking? Okay. I've enough said about all that. I'm sorry that it might upset, but
We do have some questions here. One question: why does Russia continue to show constraint in not conducting a massive bombing raid in Kiev?
well, it's a good question. The At one side of the issue, we're all still alive, probably since 2014, when a lot of this started. We're all still alive because the Russians have a historic, stoic sense of restraint. Because we've been throwing stuff at them, sanctions, economic, this, that, terrorist attacks inside Russia, things that if the Russians did that to us, we would already had 3, 4 Third World Wars. Try to imagine what would happen if somebody bombed and blew up a quarter of our B-52 strategic bombers. We'd be launching. The Russians don't. One of the reasons why the Russians don't do that is America's a young country. We're a baby country. We're kind of going through our pubescent crisis right now. Maybe we'll come out of it a mature young country from it. But Russia suffered 800 years of being invaded, uh, being and having to defend itself, and it's just kept going right up to NATO, advancing right up to their border once again after 1990 to threaten Russia, to put its missiles there, to make Moscow 4 minutes away from annihilation, just like Washington was with the Cuban Missile Crisis. Only it's NATO. It's not a few missiles on Cuba. It's NATO. 500,000 men, 32 nations, all their militaries and stuff. And it's not the first time the Russians have had Napoleon on their border, or Hitler with 3 million Nazis on the border. or the Teutonic Knights, or King Charles of Sweden, the Great Northern Wars doing this. I can go on and on and on of how many times Russia's had to deal with that. So they've learned how to fight. And they're probably in their DNA, they're probably more stoic and best fighters than anybody because they've been attacked so many times. You cannot find in history any time that Russia has unilaterally invaded Europe. They have assisted in European alliances like World War I, World War II, and also against Napoleon. But Russians just going like we European stock did and says, let's just go right up to the border of Russia and take Ukraine and break them up. What do you think if China and Russia had been on either side of America and Canada and Mexico, if they said the same thing? Wouldn't we also be building Oreshniks? You know, it is so the Russians are the famous statement about the Russians is they're very slow to get saddled, but when they're saddled, they're almost impossible to stop. That is about to happen. I'm seeing at last the signs where the Russians are going, okay, they're going to hit hard and they're going to stay with it. They'll still be reasonable. They still will not do stupid things because they know what's at stake. And they also know that they have a leadership in America and Europe who seem to have forgotten World War II and forgotten the Cold War I and nuclear deterrence and how you don't talk about using these deterrents and think you can win a war with them. They know this because they've come the closest to losing the kind of mass loss of life that you can lose in a nuclear war. They lost 27.5 million people in 3 years. They still haven't recovered from population loss. The Chinese lost 20 million in World War II. We only lost 400,000. What do we know of these kinds of losses? You ask even to this day a crowd of Russians if they lost anybody in the Great Patriotic War, the whole theater, 3 generations later, they'll raise their hands. They have this amazing walk, this victory walk on the 9th of May, where millions of Russians in the main boulevards of Moscow are quietly, peacefully celebrating and walking. And they're walking with pictures of their relatives who had died fighting the Germans. And men, women, all kinds, or people that were killed. And Putin carries his brother's picture. His brother starved to death at Leningrad. He's one out of 3 Leningraders that were starved to death by Hitler, who decided, well, we're not going to fight in the streets of Leningrad. We've cut them off. We'll just starve them all to death. So it's in their DNA, and they've done an amazing thing that we should learn. They do not forget their history. They therefore, as human beings, have a context that we lose every week. It seems like we can only remember what happened a week ago or a day ago. We need to gain that kind of sense of context. It's not there in our leadership, and that's what makes us so dangerous. So yeah, the problem is, to answer your question in brevity at last, is that the the equation is simply this: the West looks at restraint as weakness. The Russians have tried their hardest to make the point that it is not weakness. So what the West needs now is a spanking, is something to scare it, because they're children, these leaders, Merz, Macron, and his husband wife. So Russia's going to have demonstrations. I've been writing about this eventually coming. Demonstrations. If Rheinmetall who makes the Taurus missiles, is going to send them with American help to bomb deep into Russia, then that factory will be turned to dust in 11 minutes by six sub bombs made of metallic warheads hitting 6 times 6. Woof, 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 woof. Some of you have seen the photos of it. It's shocking. And if you hear the recordings, I have them my on my Hogue Prophecy bulletins. If you hear what it sounded like, it sounded like God's thunder in the apocalypse. It was loud, bright, and terrible. I've never heard a weapon make such a sound. It's like, oh, 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 Mach 10. You can't even see it. It's a white blur. Like it scared it. That worked a bit. It scared the Americans. It scared the Europeans. They backed off a bit. These people pretty thick. And I wouldn't be surprised because since that time, the Russians have been mass producing the Oreshnik, this regional ballistic missile that can fly at Mach 10, 10 times the speed of sound, and doesn't need nuclear weapons. It can just have some metal combination that if that flies in at Mach, actually, if it goes a little slower, it's even more effective. If it's at Mach 9, the very force of its kinetic force is the kind of things that happen when we had a rock the size of Manhattan Island hit Yucatan 60 million years ago and wipe out the dinosaurs. It's just a rock, but if it's flying at 8 miles a second into a mass, irresistible mass, just even though it's dirt and rock, it'll literally turn into flame and molten obliteration, atomization. So now the Russians have a weapon that can do that. It is not a nuclear weapon. And I think they've probably built 30 or 40 of them. I don't know how many, but there's now at least dozens of them. And you might see in 11 minutes, if Germany gets into it, certain places will be hit. NATO will not be able to do anything about it because Germany is willfully attacking the Russians and they are counterattacking. So it could get into that kind of game. And the question will be, will that scare the Western people straight? The Russians are harnessed now. They're ready to go. They'll do it right. It's really, if this world ends, it ends because of our stupidity in the West, not the Russians. Russia, as Casey said, is proving itself to me at least, since I've been writing about it for 20, 30 years. They are the hope of the world because they are restrained. Even in this, they will be restrained and measured. That's my hope.
We have another question.
Hmm?
You ready? I'm not really sure exactly what this means. Hopefully you do. All right. And it's a little bit more spiritual here. All right.
Well, it's time for that now.
All right.
Enough of doomsday.
So, John, do you agree or disagree with quantum physics, neogenian, cosmogenesis, and Gnostics?
Can you kind of I can understand why for you these big words, but you kind of floated off there. Could you say it a little louder the last?
Okay. So, John, can you, all right, John, do you agree or disagree with quantum physics, neogenian? I don't know what that is.
I don't
If they
either.
spelled it right or wrong, I don't know.
What's it spelled like? Neogenesis or
Neogenian. So it's Neogenian. I don't know what that is.
I
Cosmogenesis.
oh, cosmogenesis, I understand
And
that.
I'm not sure what that is either. And then Gnostics.
Gnosticism?
Gnostics.
Yeah,
Gnostics.
Gnostics. Okay. Yeah. Well, first off, the Gnostics used to be a sect in Christianity that finally was censored out of Christianity in the Council of Nicaea. Uh, the Gnostics see, if I understand it right, they see Jesus less as a divine being or a son of God, more like the way teachers in Asia are seen, as like Buddhas, mortal people who've found God sleeping inside of them. Uh, and so the whole thing about um, so they have I mean, I would suggest to people that they read the Gnostic Bibles, a Gnostic Bible, and read some of the views that had been censored by the Council of Nicaea. That happened when Constantine had this council to kind of organize the organized religion. You know, that's when Christianity became an organized religion. And if you look at, I used to own not only all the scriptures that are approved, but an even larger stack of books of scriptures that were disapproved by the Council of Nicaea. I mean, you know, the Bible and New Testament would be about this much. The stuff that didn't get in is about this much. And you know, first off, this questioner, thanks for these questions, but you say, do I believe or disbelieve? That's the problem right there. If How can I take a stand on something I don't know? And if I were to start the search looking to believe it or not, isn't that in the way? People forget that certain words, for instance, like rebellion, have gotten a negative context because the powers that be do not want you to rebel. But to be truly rebellious is good. If you're against something that's a lie, or if you're against, no, don't ask me to believe or disbelieve. That already ruins the journey. I have to go through this doubting, another word that's gotten very negative. But if you go back to its original roots, it means to hover between two possibilities, or what Buddha would call it, tathagata in Pali, which means seeing the world suchness as suchness, such as it is. Such is the case that I'm afraid. Such is the case that I'm happy. Such is the case that cosmogenesis and Gnostics have a view that's against other people, and such is the case that they then want to control, politicize, and organize it. Um, Such is the case that every religious movement creates two kinds of people in it. And Osho, my own master, said in the Ancient Music of the Pines, answering a question on a discourse on Zen in the late 70s, he he said something in my own group of neo-sannyas uh, all over the world on YouTube. They're all debating. There's this thing happening even in my community, my sangha of disciples, that is like what happens to religions. There's a so he said it in a very interesting way, and it seems like most of the people debating about it missed the opening few words and just fought with each other, because it's this issue of, in religions there are always exoterics and esoterics. The disciples of a living master, once he dies or she dies, these two general groups develop. The exoterics are good at preserving the teachings, and so that they have a place, a temple, a place to worship, a library, so that we know what Jesus did. Of course, with time, it gets changed. That also is what happens in exotericism. But then what you also have are the people who are trying to become Christs. You know, you have the people who create Buddhism to establish the religion that can last for thousands of years. And then you've got the people who are trying to become Buddhas, like Gautama Siddhartha did, who became the Buddha. His name wasn't Buddha. That wasn't his first name or something. It means the awakened one. So what happens is the people who are establishing a religion are going to rub against the people who are questioning the establishment of a religion, because they are just like Jesus was questioning the Sanhedrin. You know, the Sanhedrin was the priesthood that kept everything together, and here's this guy coming out of the East, and he's talking all these kind of somewhat Buddhistic statements because he probably was there for the last 18 years. There's certainly records in Ladakh and Leh and in Tibet that show that he was there. They called him Issa. He was the Arabic version of Jeshua when he went on his travels. And I write about this extensively in my last Hogue prophecy report. That's why it'd be great if you read it, because I've studied this for years and I finally started writing about it. Is the lost years of Jesus. I mean, some of the things that we consider the most beautiful phrases in Christianity are actually right out of the Dhammapada of Lord Buddha. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you is in scriptures that Jesus probably read, but these scriptures were written in 500 BC. So I go into all of those things in one of my longer articles. Now, about the quanta. First off, I'd say to the person who asked the question, take away the do you believe or not believe. Just first off, when you're asking a question to me, because I don't believe anything. I either know or I don't know. And there's a whole lot I don't know than there is that I know. I don't, I've gotten past, with the help of Osho, the question of belief. I also have no hope. Therefore, I have no hopelessness. I don't believe. I don't believe, therefore I have no disbelief either. So this is the way we get trapped. And then we are not even aware of how we sincerely then investigate the thing and have these traps in the way, these blinders. Doubt becomes something negative. Skepticism becomes something where, well, I don't believe this really exists. I'm going to prove it's fake. That is not skepticism, folks. That is cynicism, a kind of cynicism. Now, there's another that's more compassionate, where a person just simply doesn't believe anything until you prove its merit. That's more Diogenes form of cynicism. So there's a higher form of cynicism, not the lower form, where it's just some grumpy old man going, nah, I don't believe anything. And I'll prove it's all wrong BS anyway, because I can be like James Randi was. There's nothing in Nostradamus that's true. I know it. And then he walks in and spends half his life just reinforcing his own blinders. And there's the other side. There's other people like Victor Baines once said this, so I'm not being nasty to talk about it. He said it on a documentary that I was on. So I'll quote him. He says, Nostradamus there never gets it wrong. Victor is he's a good guy, but I know him, but he's the opposite of James Randi. He's come into the nebulousness of Nostradamus. And of course, he always finds that Nostradamus always gets it right because he's already believed it. He doesn't disbelieve it, so he can make all those nebulous prophecies dance to his belief, and he's unconscious of the belief. James Randi, even when pointed out by me and others that Nostradamus didn't get all of his prophecies wrong, even he said, and you cannot deny it, James, he said that I will be more famous after I'm dead than I ever was while I was alive. Didn't that happen? So, so the things that you gave a list to, which are great, I wish I had more time to talk about them, but the one that's key to me is when you're talking about quantum physics. Quantum physics is someday going to do something even more amazing than find the theory of relativity. they're going to be the bridge to science and mysticism interacting, which is the destiny of the both in the Aquarian age, which we are entering in a twilight period where now there's more Aquarian age than Piscean age, but it'll take another 150 years for the Piscean age to completely be not trying to control and hold this stuff on. You know, these attempts to make police states, a global police state, is a Piscean centralized control issue that the Aquarian age, which is growing in humanity and the sovereignty of the individual rather than the sovereignty of superpowers, um, it's resisting that. But every day it's getting weaker and weaker because every day the age of science is coming. The Aquarian age is the age of science in its true meaning. Scira in Latin means to know, not to believe. This new era of the Aquarian age is not an age of belief and central divine sourced stuff, political. You know, it's not a patriarchy. It's more matriarchy, but it is beyond that too. It is science. And science means, and the other thing that is a science is meditation. Meditation is not a religion. You can be an atheist, a Christian, you can be whatever your faith is, whatever your religion is. The techniques of the inner science of meditation makes you more sensitive, more centered, more available to witness a thing without being blinded by your judgments and blinders, to not taint the tea with the flavor of your ego. Just let the water of reality be pure. Now, there are scientists that are seeing this, and they are starting to even look at it through quantum physics. They're starting to see a situation where consciousness could actually be proven. And it's similar to the situation that gravity is working with. You know, we see what gravity does. We see its works, but we don't know what it is. But science has not said, oh, well, therefore we're not going to use it if we don't know what it is. No, they just go deeper into it. The scientific discipline of observation in meditation as in objective science is exactly the same. In the Millennium Book of Prophecy 30 plus years ago, I pointed it out how. It's the same. You have a theory, you have a hypothesis, just as you do in phenomenal science. And the hypothesis is everything that's happening for you and me and Paul and everybody watching this show just a wonderful game of a organic brain that's making us believe we exist as people, that there's a God, that there's a heaven and a hell and all that? Or is that just a joke of chemistry of the brain? And when we die, there's nothing. Of course, the problem is the concept of nothing is also a concept. So even the idea of nothingness is not something that any of us can conceive. So even the idea of, so, you know, I've had this happen with atheists. They say, well, and I say to them, okay, what is the same about everything you've said here? That none of this you brought into the world. You didn't come saying, I've been where there's nothing. You're a kid innocently full of some mystery, and parents and pedagogues and politicians and priests are saying, there is nothingness. No, there's God. There, and then you're just taking all that in. And then if you're an atheist, you end up saying, well, when I said this to atheists, I said, you can't, you all your concepts of atheism about what is actually beyond the brain are from the brain. So they're irrelevant. Your entire argument is irrelevant. It does not answer the question whether there's an existence beyond the brain. This is an old science in Asia. It's thousands of years old. We are very advanced in the West technologically, but our religions are childlike. All you have to do is believe in me as the Son of God, and you're forgiven. It's very childish or childlike. But if you look into the religions of the East, they are very sophisticated. But ultimately, their sophistication points to the same thing, the Turiya, the fourth state, which is the root and source of all phenomenal life. And we are it. That's the hypothesis. So quantum physics does I wrote in my book, A New Cold War, back in 2024, when the second Cold War began, when the Nazis took over Ukraine and the sanctions for Russia for trying to defend and help the Russian-speaking Ukrainians. That all started in 2014, and I saw it as this is the short version of the second Cold War that goes hot. But in that, it was an interesting thing because I had a pool of German prophets, mostly German, but they were a group of prophets that were really good at predicting World War I, II, and a third World War. So I put them together. Some of them go back into 7th century, but the majority of them were Germans. So I go, why is that? Well, the Germans were responsible for World War I and II. And the Germans, like uh, that were the prophets that I use in the control group were the Bavarian Stormberger, Bartholomeus, Holzhauser, who was a contemporary of Nostradamus, and also a great medieval German saint also said it. And, in quanta, the quantum, when it's being observed, changes. What if a quantum, a prophet, a German quantum in the 7th century, in the 16th century, and in the late 18th century, were these three of the best of them who really saw World War I and II clearly. No doubt about it. What if they are German quanta of their space, trying to observe the quanta that could make those German-induced world wars in this space in the 20th century? And they're in the 7th through the 16th up to the end of the 18th century. Are they observing the other quanta, or are the other quanta observing them and changing them by making them visionaries of the disaster that Germans would make? Or are these prophets quantas, are they trying to change that quanta by forewarning them not to take it back to them? So that's about as quanta as you can get. So next question.
All right. This is from Slack. Putin was on the World Economic Forum website as a young global leader, as many other country leaders are. He was removed the day of the Ukraine war. He was removed day of the Ukraine war started.
Yeah, the day that
is he really set? Is he really separate, or just in the club we are not in?
He is separate. That's a good question, actually. He is separate. Yes, I recall him going to the world forums, but he also went to other forums. Putin was very open to the West, open to the world, still is. He learned from all those experiences. He's about having dialogues with people. He's about having dialogues with people who have different views. Um, he learned a lot from that. But he is always Russia first. Always. He is the ultimate patriot in that regard. But he's not an isolationist. Russia Russians know more about what's going on in the world than we do. Even the street cabbie knows more what's going on than we do. The Russians are tapped in. And of course, you know, I even was watching, there was a time where I thought the whole globalist thing could be actually a bridge to a one world government that would work. And in that being open to look at that and not walk in either blindly believing or blindly disbelieving, not doing the Randy Baines equation. I walk in with no hope and no hopelessness, no belief or disbelief. I'm walking in and I've learned much from it, and things have evolved over time. And just as they've done with Putin, as I can see it, because I've also done it. When you do a thing, you can recognize it in others because you have experience, not knowledge, experience. You have a context. And so I I think that he's proving that he's not part of it. I mean, there's no global, the globalists have been completely kicked out by their own sanctions, and Putin has not done anything to encourage them to come back. You know, he doesn't go to those meetings anymore. I don't follow Schwab anymore. I've seen him as an impediment to a kind of globalism. The problem is it's a Piscean age idea. Remember, I'm saying that the Piscean age has still got a lot of influence on us. So it kind of catches us unconscious. We like when a few decades back when we were more in the Piscean age, I was more thinking of, yeah, you've got to have a government, one government, and no nations, and then as the years went by, the Aquarian age started to influence me more and more, and I realized, well, there may be one government that probably should move every year or every 3 months to a capital in one of the continents and keep moving around so it keeps appraised of where the real governing is. Small democracy. You see, the problem is democracies, after they get a certain size, have to become fascist because democracy is a local form of government. So what I started to see was a possibility that the world was going to have more localized government than one big government. Because even Osho talked about that prophecy, but he thought the government should only be like the post office. It's just there to make sure the trains run and things work. It's not there, it's just a service to the rest of the human race. So, you know, that's definitely not where Klaus Schwab is going. He wants to get in everybody's head and he wants to get in everybody's pants and, you know, and do all kinds of things. Um, but rather than be just a postman. So different kind of globalism. But what I'm also understanding is now, and it seems contradictory, but what's happening in the BRICS, which I started to watch when in the 90s when they were putting themselves together, I'm saying this little group of debaters, debate club, they're the future of the Aquarian age forms of government. They're going to create a community of sovereign nations, a village, you might call it a village, where the sovereign nations are all respected for their sovereignty, and it's like nobody coming into your home and telling you how you should be and how you should live and how you should follow their tempo of change rather than your own, and work in a more the important thing of stabilizing the world rather than doing what the West has done, divide everybody, divide and conquer, perpetuate chaos so that there's never you have an incontinent civilization. It's always leaking wars. It says thing this way once and then it's something else the next day. This is the kind of incontinence that no stability can suffer. So this thing that's building out of the BRICS is really, I'm surprised to say, but not surprised that it's happening in the 2020s because I've always warned for 30, 40 years that the 2020s would be this is really the point of a change. Either we don't make it or it sets us on a whole new direction. That's why I've called them the roaring 2020s. Um, so I see the steps that we're going in the next 150 years in the Aquarian age is decentralization of government, decentralization of religions, a decentralization of grids of political and power grids. The first stage of that is nations being left alone to be respected as whatever they are, and they respect everyone else as they are, as sovereign nations trying to work their little worlds out. I mean, the Chinese are trying to balance democracy with totalitarianism. It's quite an experiment. That's going to be difficult. You've opened the free markets, but then you've got to keep all the billionaires out of your governments. Why? Because they watch what's happening to us. That's a very simple lesson the Chinese are telling us. That's why there's no billionaires running the government like we do. It's turning us into a fascist mess and a feudalist, neo-feudalist society. But if you respect every nation and you trade with every nation, knowledge, experiences, goods, you create a more stable world. And that creates more wealth in the world and then more wealth for more people to share. I mean, there's a thing coming where we will have to redefine what work is. It's coming within, it's already starting. You know, our technologies will create a service economy of robots and things, and the human race has got to stop thinking of itself as a beast of burden or the overlords that are constantly crushing down the overwhelmed beast of burdens. It's a fundamental change that must come. Otherwise, the machines will destroy us like they destroyed Dr. Frankenstein. His Frankenstein monster is alive in AI, artificial idiocy. We can never make these machines equal to us because they will have computer capabilities we do not have, and they will take us out. Simple as that. I can't, as a man who's so verbose as I am, I can't say more about it. Don't do that. Always make sure they're not people. They're not, they do not have souls. They are machines. Even if they are as eloquent and beloved as Data, they're machines. Um, your ego is the problem. You're trying to recreate your ego in something else. And ego is not the eternal being. When you die, your ego dies, but maybe not your soul, your source. Uh, we have to deal with the challenges of AI from our hearts, from our source, not from our egos. We need meditation more than ever because you have to be able to witness your ego in work and understand it, to know that these people who are thinking they're making a better world are just making a monstrous world. And we'll go through it and hopefully we'll survive it. Or we'll do something like in Dune, you know, the rebellion against the machines. But what eventually is going to happen is a decentralization of the world is what the Aquarian Age's goal is, and the eventual unit of political sovereignty is not even going to be a country. It will start with a community of sovereign countries, but in the next 100 years or so, it will dissolve into a world where the only sovereignty is in every individual that lives on it. Now, if you are a sovereign individual, as sovereign as a nation, you'll discover that you must live in community. You cannot help but live in community because you will have anarchy as it really was intended. I even having to change the name when I write essays about anarchia, I call it, because the name has been so abused. Anarchy means no government because the people govern themselves. And that means they know in their own wisdom the checks and balances of living in community. In fact, the world will only be a community of individuals when they're all sovereign. Next question.
Oh, we don't have a question. We ran out of questions here. If anyone would like to ask a question on X Spaces, please do, or type it in the chat. While we're waiting for that, John, if you want to explain to the audience your periodicals and your readings.
Yes, I've had the pleasure of sharing one-on-one readings with a lot of my readers. Uh, they will see this background just as you're seeing it. And I do these readings. I was initiated into them by my master Osho in 1987 and in India. And I basically, it's a one-on-one. Some astrology is used. It's done with Zoom. Some astrology is looked at. We look at general themes. It's the Kelly Blue Book of your body, mind, vehicle. So it's good to start with that. And then we go deeper into what drives it and how that driver is, through conditioning, made to forget that he drives the car, the body, mind, vehicle, which will go down the road of life for a while until it breaks down. And then that eternal driver gets out of the car and finds another new car and drives that for a while. But the problem is, in the essence of what I was saying about how ego is creating artificial intelligence to be something terrible, is that those people that are creating it after the age of 7 to 14, they've been programmed to forget the soul driver. They think, in fact, they say that they start to believe that they are the car, this body, mind, vehicle. Most people live and die their lives thinking that they are this car. And some of them who believe there's nobody driving then says when the car dies, it's all over. Other people, theists, think, oh, well, then there's some holy car that might come and drive them away from this problem and save them. But it's all conceived from the car, not the thing that drives it. And the other thing is that most people then, see, there's the steering wheel, to use this metaphorical thing about the car. The steering wheel is not the soul, but it's where the soul comes and drives it. The steering wheel is the heart. It's, you're living in a mind-oriented world where no one's ever called the heart of a company, the heart of a religion. The Pope's the heart of the Catholic Church. They're the head. In fact, one of the meditations I often like to give people in my readings, it's a very playful meditation, ancient, from Lord Shiva way back, that the Osho taught. And it's like you, for 21 days, you wake up, go to sleep, you do everything that you do as before. You're able to think and laugh and be who you are, as nothing's changed, except one minor thing. For 21 days, waking and sleeping as you're going to sleep, as you're waking up, and doing all the actions of your day, or doing nothing, visualize yourself doing all of this without a head on your shoulders. It's an interesting thing. Even just try it. Just try it for all of you out there. You're watching me talking. Just for a few moments. Just see yourself as you're seeing me before you. And as you're watching and attending to this, see yourself with just shoulders. And then watch how I have nothing but shoulders. One thing that happens in this meditation is that it makes one aware of the stuckness of being head-oriented rather than heart-oriented. It then happens that what the Zen masters say, you start to experience. You start to understand what they're saying when they say, always remember, walk without feet, fly without wings. My master Osho added, think without mind. rather than being full of mindfulness. I'm talking about techniques that help you come to a point of no mind fullness. So that's a taste of what we do. We talk about all kinds of things. We start with astrology. Um, I do it differently than people. Some people come and of course they do the thing where they close down and okay, tell me what's going on with me. And I look at them and say, I'm a I'm an empath. I can't I can tell you what's on. You're shut like a trap door right now. What I can see is you're saying, well, I'm gonna hold on to this one and that one. I want to see if he's gonna read me like they do in the movies or Zelda down the street, in her with their crystal ball and they can suddenly see it. Uh, yeah, no, what I'm reading is you're completely closed down and and maybe a little afraid that what you need to do in this reading is do opposite that what your mind wants you to do, because the mind is a controller. I see that. I will say to them, just let go of that. Open up. Feel your heart. Watch your breath coming in and out. And then an empathic medium like me will ask you to tell me your story. It's not about facts and this and that. This is not one of those occult guessing games. I don't do that. I do something deeper. I do what I do for you as I do for reading the world. The world in its own way, online, and the way I reach out into it is telling me its story, its hopes, its fears, where it wants to go, where it's afraid to go. And what then happens is the oracular experience begins. Plan A, that's going nowhere. Plan B is this way or that way. Plan Z has the best chance. And these are the things that are there to help or hinder it. That's what I do. No Zelda down the street. So that's some of the things I do. The other thing is I also use the Osho Zen Tarot deck, which, grab it here. I watched these cards being created when I was in 1987, around the year I got initiated into this. Ma David Padma, American, now lives outside of Melbourne, great artist living with her husband who's a sculptor. And back in the late 80s, Osho was instructing her how to rebuild the ancient tradition, based on the ancient tradition of the tarot from Egypt. That's why they're called gypsies, because the Indians from South Asia who are migrating became the Romani. A big migration of them left Egypt and entered Europe, and everybody called them Egyptians. So that's why they are called gypsies for short. These cards are amazing. They have so many living stories like courage. Here's this rock, dead as dead, dumb as rock. And yet somehow in the life, a flower of life with a Buddha aura is coming through the rocks, the sterile rocks. This is one metaphor. But with each of you, when I read you, the story changes. There are 8 billion stories in every one of these cards, as many as there are people alive. And I marvel at it, how many times the stories are different from the same picture. You get guidance. This is the Princess of Rainbows. They come up a lot, this suit. This is the suit of the Pentacles. Earth-related issues, where your terra firma stance is, material issues. Well, we take this to another level, a spiritual level of the spiritualness of being on terra firma, of being earthly, of being Zorba the Greek, of being, there's a thing, and the way that you can truly be on this earth 100% is if you're here and now, in every moment, 24/7. It is, if one can be here and now and you find eternity. It's not in time. It's no time, no mind. And it's eternal. It's never born. It has never died. It only appears to do that when it gets into the car. And it works better when the steering wheel is not placed to the side like is done by the way we're conditioned. And instead, they put the mind, the brake, as the steering wheel. You know, the heart, the brake is the head. It stops to think. The heart opens. That's why it's the steering wheel for the soul. If you put the brake where you're supposed to drive, you drive like this. You just never really get going anywhere because you think too much rather than be. And so, but the rainbow cards and all the suits and the 10 cards and all it's different, like the princess here of rainbows. She's winged victory and she's all colors of rainbows. Um, The magic is simply like this very earthly, ordinary thing. If you see a rainbow, it's because you are 120 degrees. The position on Earth that you're seeing it is 120 degrees to the angle of the rain and the position of the sun. You are in a prism trine, harmonious. That's what this is in astrology. The triangle, the trine, is a harmonious state. That harmonious state happens when you're not in the past or not obsessed by the future. You're just here. Then existence shares all of its secrets with you. So these little moments this is kind of stuff that happens in these readings. There's also a lot of laughter and stories. And it usually lasts 2 hours. That's why I only do one reading a day. With all the other stuff I do it at 5 p.m. Pacific time, although I can do it at 11 for Europe and United Kingdom. I can do it at 5. It works really well for Australians, who that's 10. Of course, then when daylight savings time, it gets a little weird. I have to work on that, but we work it out. And I can do any time if you live somewhere. I did a reading for somebody in a missile test site in an atoll in the middle of nowhere. It's one of the atolls, kind of Kalelu or something, not Palelu, but something that's really near the international date timeline, and it's really in the middle of the Pacific. You can't get farther away from anything than this island. And it was fun because she picked up her her iPad and she moved to the window and showed me outside. The palm trees are blowing, and I saw the same huts and same buildings that the base had, and it was only now in 3D. Well, it was moving. So yeah, all kinds of interesting things happen. Um, and I if you go to hogueprophecy.com, you'll see right at the top of the page how to join, how to get to me, and it's just this link to an email, hoguebulletin@hogueprophecy.com, and then all you need to do, because I get hundreds of emails, so to make it easy for me and not lose your email, just put Hogue reading, HOGUE reading, or reading, and then I'll get back to you, explain how it's done, how to set it up. And you see, I'm world famous person, so I'm saying this because a lot of people ask, why don't you charge more? Because you're famous, you're a celebrity, or all of this. And I said, if I wanted, I could charge $1,000 for 2 hours and get it. But I'd be only reading rich people. You know? So I had to come to something where I said I had a yes. And the number that I said a yes, where if more, because it'll attract more people to get more readings, I make a living through the volume of sharing more. It makes more profitable for me. So the number is $149 for 2 hours. Uh, and so, and it's very easy to convert the money on PayPal and do all that. Like I've got it set up. So that's about the longest I've ever done a talk on on my my readings.
Oh, John, we're getting close to the witching hour here. I did put in the chat the link to John's website, so please click that link. But also in the description of all the videos I've done and in this video, if you click those links, it'll take you to his website. Please subscribe to the periodical and please do a reading to help support the work that John does. We do these videos for free for the audience, but it'd be helpful if you help support John's work. I greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure that John would also appreciate it. And you have books too. You have like 52
I
books.
do. I have you go on Amazon and you type in John Hogue, or if you go to one of the pages where the first page you go to the little link that links to my name, the author's name. Then you will get the whole catalog of what they have. It's just kind of the surface of what I've done. I've published 53 books in 22 languages since 1987, thousands of essays and articles. I I think my correspondences to people, I stopped counting about 10 years ago when I think it was around 60,000 emails. Because I love interacting with all of you. You inspire me. So many of you, and a lot of my writing is just talking to my readers and being turned on to things or checking things out. So please, don't be shy. I love to interact with you all.
And just to remind the audience, we try to do these videos every 2 weeks or so. So, we're not perfect at the timing here, but we try to do it every 2 weeks. So if there's anyone that's new, please join us in 2 weeks.
Yep.
So
Every other Sunday.
yeah. So I think that we'll wrap it up here. But thank you very much for the ones that did participate in the chat.
Yes.
And the ones that were on X Basis, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
So, John, we're gonna wrap it up here, but just say goodbye to everybody before we close it out.
Goodbye to everybody.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And please click the link that's in the description. That will take you to John's website and sign up for his periodical and sign up for a reading. I greatly appreciate it. All right. Thank you for listening. John, just hold on so I can just close this out.